But right now, I have Mr. Stephen Gees. That's Stephen with a P and an H. Stephen Gees. You can find him at stephengees.com. Stephen's a retired TV producer, composer. He's done that for music and television. Stephen Gees has mellowed out a little bit, though, now. He's living lakeside as a writer and editor, graphic artist, and Fresh Ink Group publisher. He's the founding member of Fresh Ink Group, and you can find Fresh Ink Group at freshinkgroup.com. But right now, let's bring Stephen on and hear a little bit more about this. Stephen, are you there?
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, pretty good.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Stephen. Could you tell us a little bit about Fresh Ink Group?
Well, Fresh Ink Group's been around a couple of decades now. As I was winding down doing television production and other kinds of projects, I started getting more into writing books, and I went into the traditional publishing field, where they give you a contract and then they take charge of your content and do whatever they want to it. And I and a couple of friends of mine who were writers grew increasingly unhappy with our lack of control and being able to even set the price of a book, right, and how much we earned from it, what message was said or whatever. So Fresh Ink Group started as literary management for us, but it slowly evolved into actually doing the publishing so that the authors had full control, earned most of the money, decided how they wanted to package and publish, and it's been growing ever since.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, where did you get the idea for this? Now, it was just you being an author yourself. What kind of things do they do? What kind of freedoms do you lose necessarily when you're not doing it yourself?
Well, one of the big ones is they decide how they wanted to package it, price it, and put it out there.
Right.
And they, in the traditional publishing, they usually print up a bunch of copies, stick it in a warehouse, and then orders fill that, deplete that supply, and then they don't print anymore unless there's a huge demand for it.
Yeah.
So I would have books that would come out, but then people I knew across the country couldn't find it because, at first I was considered a small-time author, right, so they wouldn't print very many copies. Whereas if we do it ourselves, we print the copies as they're ordered and make them available worldwide. So we get our costs down, we get them out there all over the world, and we keep them in print for years and years and years. So basically, we control putting it out there in the market as opposed to letting somebody else do it and then move on.
Right. Now, if a writer, an author, someone wanted to get involved with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Well, at Fresh Ink Group, we have a contact page. So people go on there and they answer questions and talk about their project, and then they can send it to us for a free evaluation.
Right.
And then we make recommendations to them if we think something's getting ready to be published, or if it needs some work, it needs some editing or whatever, and we try to help the authors get to the point to where they're ready to go.
Right. Now, I noticed that you also have a blog. You do how-to materials for authors, podcasts, video scripts, things like that. Now, are those things that are available, through your company, or are those just things you have done specifically?
Well, it's both. I have like a G's Writer series for writers,
okay,
and it's to help people learn how to be more effective storytellers, how to present their material, because there's a lot of people who have some tremendous stories, sometimes true stories, sometimes fiction, and they're pretty good at telling them, but getting it on paper and getting it organized and edited and tight and presented in a way that's going to be palatable to people who might want to buy it, sometimes there's a couple of big steps, and people need some help with that. So if they go to Fresh Ink Group and send us some material, show us what they're doing, and tell us about themselves, then, we don't try to charge money or anything. We're just a group of people trying to help out authors. So we'll get back to them and tell them what we think and give them some ideas and some options for how they can proceed with publishing. In some cases, that might be with us. In most cases, maybe it's self-publishing or changing what their focus is or looking at some other options.
Right. Now, do you work with all genres? I mean, you in particular, as an author, what do you write in all genres? What kind of genre do you write in?
Well, I kind of cover a little bit of a range. I do the how-to materials, like the G's Writer, for example, for writers, and I have a collection of essays that just a hardback copy of that just came out this week. It's 54 personal experience essays where I just talk about things that have happened with people that I know and how we found some inspiration in that, or learned something about life, or noticed something we hadn't noticed before. And a big one for me is appreciating what we have, the people around us and what we enjoy about life and things like that.
Right.
So I have that kind of stuff. I write short stories, which are fiction, and then I have a bunch of novels. And I have some novels that are just mainly fun and tell some stories or whatever, but most of my novels, I make it a point to say something.
Right.
And that, try to get across some kind of point, help us understand something about ourselves, show how people who are very different can find ways to get along, something. I always try to put some things in there and make a point so that as the story tells, people learn something and maybe see things a little bit differently.
Right. Now, you being a producer on television, also, I guess it's music for television you produced?
Yeah, I used to do that when I lived in the North and had a lot more access to studios and stuff. So mainly what I'm doing with production and having fun doing that now is making book trailers for our authors.
Oh,
so like if you go to YouTube and you go to the Fresh Ink Group channel, you can see videos about the various books that we publish and about our authors. And we've been doing those and getting new software and exploring the new capabilities. I used to have whole crews and $1 million studios in order to do stuff that I can sit and do on my laptop right now while I'm sitting next to the lake watching the birds.
Right, that's
so
amazing.
it's kind of cool, the technological capabilities, and that's the fun we've been having, is making the trailers for the books, and sometimes some how-to videos and other things like that.
Right. Now in your podcast, what are some of the topics you cover?
Mostly it's talking to authors and seeing what they have to say and hearing their stories, basically. But our bigger focus is, using the videos and things like that to help promote our authors, because we're just an independent group.
Right.
We try to do things our way. We try to control everything from the money to the pricing. We would rather put out a book at a cost that people can afford, rather than letting a major publishing company try to mark it up too much.
Right.
So it's all about just reaching out to people wherever they are and however they are.
Right.
One thing I really enjoy is our authors are all around the world. For example, we have a Pakistani woman who teaches at a university in the United Arab Emirates.
Wow.
We have another woman who she lives in Switzerland, and she's reached that point in her life where she needed to leave her husband and try to start a new life for herself as an independent woman.
Right.
We have a guy who's in Tokyo. He's a professor in Tokyo, and he writes novels. So they're spread around the world, which is really fun because we get to talk to people and hear about how they live and what kind of issues they face and what kind of stories that come out of that.
Right. Now, say one of our listeners, they're out there and they have, like you said, they can tell the story, they have an idea, everybody's telling them that'd be great, make a great book, and that's, what's the first step they need to do, Stephen?
Well, if they think that they're ready to start talking to a publisher, go to freshinkgroup.com and use the contact form and tell us about what their story is and show us some samples and talk about that.
Right.
If they're not quite to that point first, then I suggest they maybe start with some of my G's Writer materials, learn some things about how to structure stories and how to deliver them a little more succinctly than most people do. But I think a lot of it starts with just getting to know the right people. Talk to other authors, talk to us, get to know some of the people who are involved in this and learn how the industry works, and then see how they can find a way to fit in and make that work for themselves.
Right. So they would go, now that would be gswriter.com is where they would go for that?
Well, gswriter.com is what we've set up, and it's a bunch of other experts and authors who have information about how to tell stories, how to get published, and things like that. That they can find at gswriter.com. FreshInkGroup.com is the publisher. So if they really think they're ready to start talking to a publisher, they can go to the contact form there. And then, of course, StephenG's.com is my website with my blog and short stories and essays and things by me so that people can read about things that I've written.
Right. Absolutely. Excellent. Hey, guys, if you are just joining me, I am with Mr. Stephen G's. And Stephen is actually the founding member of Fresh Ink Group. at freshinkgroup.com. Now, you can go to his site, StephenGees.com, and you can find out. Now, Stephen, are these books on here? Are these available on your site? I mean, you can get them on the site. Do people go? Can they get them at Amazon, or what? How do they get the books?
Well, they're available at retailers worldwide.
Okay.
If they like ebooks, for example, whatever format they use, wherever they buy them, they can go to, if they have Apple, they can go to iTunes or iBooks. If they have Kindle, they can go to Amazon and buy Kindle editions. They can go to Barnes & Noble and buy Nook editions. But all of the books, we also put out print versions, both paperback and hardcover. And those they can order from any retailer that sells books. And Amazon, of course, is the big one. Yeah. But Barnes & Noble and Books A Million and any of the others, it depends on where they are in the world and what kind of sites they use. Right. But we do have worldwide penetration, and we try to make the books available. And we print them on demand, too. So as their books are ordered, we print them and ship them that day. And usually they can receive them within a day or two.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, Stephen, let me ask you, what is, this is just going to be a fun question because we don't have a lot of time left, but what is your favorite part of this whole thing? What's your favorite part about the business?
Wow, that's a good question. Favorite part. There are probably two, and one is with my books. When I get to the point to where I put one out, and then I start hearing from people, that's really nice because a writer spends a lot of time staring at a keyboard and trying to put things together, but when it reaches the point to where it touches other people, that's when the connection happens and you start to feel what you're doing is speaking to others. And then the second favorite part would be when our writers at Fresh Ink Group have those kinds of experiences and they tell us about them.
Right.
I mean, we have a cancer survivor in Denver, a young woman who's interested now in helping other young people understand about dealing with cancer. So when she tells us that she's heard from an 11-year-old girl who's facing cancer and somebody gave her book and how it really helped her feel good about what she's going to face and that she can do that, that comes back to us. That feels good. That makes it feel like what we're doing is making a difference out there in the world.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, guys, this is Mr. Stephen Gees. He is the founding member. He's an author. He's a founding member of Fresh Ink Group. I would suggest to you, if you're ready for publishing, if you're at that point with your writing, go to freshinkgroup.com. If you are a writer who needs some assistance, maybe some pointers from someone who has experience, and definitely Stephen does, being a producer, composer, producer of music for television, he has the experience, folks. You could go to StephenGees.com or you could go to GeesWriter.com and get some great information. Stephen, I want to thank you so much for being on with us today. A lot of great information there, and thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a great day, and God bless. Thank you.
Okay, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.